My name is Roy Ratnavel, and I live in Toronto. I'm a retired Bay Street executive. I retired about 2 years ago, and around the time when I wrote my memoir. And currently, I'm basically spending my time, what I call return stage of my life, giving back to this great nation that gave me a chance to rebuild a life at the age of 18. So I'm spending a lot of my time mentoring new immigrants, mentoring young professionals in the financial services industry, and also being part of hospital boards, trying to deliver better healthcare to people, certain parts in Toronto, or maybe I would say underserviced community in the Toronto area. And also doing some keynote speaking now and then, trying to tell my story of hope and story of basically talking about human resilience and how much humans can achieve if they're given the right conditions, which is, in my opinion, freedom and choice. Yeah, I grew up in Sri Lanka. For the listeners, Sri Lanka went through a horrible civil war for over 3 decades. And the height of it was in the it started around the 70s, but it intensified around the mid 80s. And I was the age of 17, living in the north. That's where the fight took place. The revolution started, per se. And I was rounded up at the age of 17 along with 2,700 other Tamil individuals, no other than being guilty of a Tamil. And I was sent to prison and I was subjected to horrific, unimaginable torture. Spent a couple of months in there and miraculously I was able to leave the prison. And that experience taught me that there are always conflicts and the human beings have been in conflict since the time we walked the earth, whether it's tribalistic, whether it's cultural, whether it's religious based, whatever the divisions are. But what I learned is that the reason that I'm alive today is because there were people on the other side of the aisle that thought that this kid doesn't deserve the punishment and gave me the human treatment, I would say. So I guess what I learned from that experience is that conflicts are never black or white. There's so much gray in it, and there are so many good people on both sides. And because of that, I'm here today. Because of that, I'm talking to you. Because of the humanity that Canada provided me and the chance of survival here and the fair treatment. So I guess that's what I learned. The human spirit can be broken, but not easily. And I think at the end of the day, we all have agency. And I think if people are left alone, given the right, I would say, level playing field as much as we can provide the level playing field. And I think that society thrives, and that's what I learned and put in prison. And my father had a great friend who was the colonel in the army, in the government. And I was able to miraculously send him a message through the defense minister of that country at the time. Sorry, the defense minister's wife came on a mission to, I guess, to see I would say more like a photo op, just to show the national media that everybody's treated very nicely and all that. She came and I was able to communicate through her. And remember this Colonel Uncle Fernando, we used to call him. And I gave his home phone number. I still remembered that after many years of not being in contact with him. And so that was the first act of kindness by the opposite side. She could have just gone home and not bothered about this skinny, smelly Tamil prisoner, but she did take the time to call this Colonel Fernando and basically informed him that your friend's son is in prison. So, without a question, he drove many hours to the prison camp and vouched for me and got me out of there. Took me to his house and looked after me. Him and his wife looked after me really well and tended to my wounds and fed me and tried to fatten me up again. So that was the reason I would say that the first reason of survival. I think that there's a pretty good chance that I would have died in the prison camp if it wasn't for that one interaction with the defense minister's wife and then she following up with my dad's friend and who then came and rescued me. I think the war ended, it lasted for one of the longest lasting conflict on the planet. And as I said earlier, it was based on two linguistic groups, and then it was peaceful at first, and then it became armed insurrection. The Tamil Tigers became the dominant force on the Tamil side that fought the government quite successfully for a very long time. And then eventually, I guess the government, with the help of foreign nations, able to squash the rebellion. And now we are looking at the war ended in 2009. So now, I don't know, 18 years later, oh, sorry, 16 years later, I would say clearly there's no one's being killed. That's a positive. I think the country is trying to get back of the full rights of Tamils, but I think that the foreign Tamil diaspora is investing back in Sri Lanka. I think the country went through hyperinflation, top of the previous government. Now there's a government in place that's left leaning per se. And I think the current president is, I would say, probably doing his best to mend the fences and heal the wounds. But structurally, I don't think there's been big changes that have been made. For ones that there are a lot of people still missing. And I think the Tamil parents, mothers and fathers, been begging the government to do an investigation and figure out who the culprits are and bring them to justice. And sometimes these wounds won't heal unless there's some kind of a justice being delivered. So I would say on a 1 to 10 scale, let's say the situation 10 being good, really good, and one being really worse. I would say in a decade, maybe we move from 3 to 4. I think there's more needs to be done. I think fundamentally the constitution needs to be changed, something like Canadian constitution, where equal rights are given to everyone as much as we can do. No system is perfect, but I think that Sri Lanka has a ways to go to get to where Canada is. I mean, it was very confusing because I never left Sri Lanka. And so here I am, here I was, 18 years old, and I spoke a little bit of English, but not to any proficiency. And also, even if you spoke the language, the culture seemed very different. Everything was big. I look at these tall buildings and I couldn't believe these buildings are this tall. And the highway system, coming from the airport into the city of Scarborough, looking at 401, and I was in awe I couldn't even believe that these things existed. I didn't even know. And unfortunately, 2 days after I landed, my father was shot and killed by the Indian Army. They were there for a peacekeeping mission, but ended up being start killing the Tamil population. And he was shot and killed. So I guess at that moment, part of me died, and the other part of me became a fighter. And my father was everything to me. He was my hero, my inspiration. He taught me a lot of stuff. He taught me my first Shakespeare play, Hamlet. I was a big fan of Margaret Thatcher. He taught me world politics and literature and all that. So I felt absolutely gutted when he died. And I thought in that moment, if I had to live for two people, and I had to live for two people because he sent me to Canada to have a life. And so I thought if I did well enough in life, I could give him the life he should have always had. And that became what I call coal for the furnace of my ambition. And so I came to study, but ended up start working. So I started first working in a factory during daytime. And then at night, I would go downtown and clean buildings. And then in the weekend, I was a security guard at a construction site. So I had three jobs because I had to bring my mother now, who was alone in Sri Lanka. So I was trying to make some money so I can show the government that I can take care of my mother. I was doing this, and then one day I was cleaning a building on Bay Street. It's at 44 King Street West, which is the Scotiabank building. And I was on the top floor. It could have been the CEO's office, I don't know, but it's a massive office, corner office with couches, fridge, and big boardrooms. It looked like someone's living room. And I thought, why can't I aspire to be this and at least try my luck on Bay Street? And a few weeks later, I started looking into a newspaper, Toronto Sun, and at the back of it, I saw an ad that said office help needed 14K. I didn't even know what K meant. So I applied anyways. I got an interview with a job agency. They rejected me, but the long story was that I refused to get rejected. I went straight to the company that was hiring and demanded that they should give this job to this skinny kid with no experience. Because I figured it's just a mailroom job. What kind of experience do you need? And I think that's one of the thing about every immigrant must have heard in Canada. You don't have Canadian experience because how could you have an experience when you haven't actually had an opportunity, right? So I refused to leave the lobby of that office, and a very kind lady named Gail came in. She was the hiring manager. She took me into her office, and that's the second, I would say, human interaction where she felt that why don't we give this kid a chance and see what he does? And so I got the job. I was the 24th employee at a very small asset management company on Bay Street. No one ever heard of. Individually owned by a gentleman named Robert McRae. We used to call him Mr. McRae. He was a war pilot. He was just like my grandfather. He was such a nice man. And in that company, I met three important individuals. All three of them became my mentors, my guardians. So in some ways, even though my father died, it almost these people became my surrogate fathers in some ways. And they encouraged me to go to school. And Mr. McRae actually wrote a check for me to go to take night courses. So I started studying, working, doing all kind of stuff at the same time. Many nights of overtimes. I just worked. Just like my dad used to say, there's dignity in hard work. And I refused. He used to tell me, do not depend on anybody. Go to Canada, fend for yourself. Don't beg. Don't like, have respect for yourself. And so I would never borrow money or any of that stuff. And so I just worked. And eventually, the timing was good and also made sure that I worked hard and earned the respect of my colleagues. And slowly I started realizing that there are other things I can do besides being a mailroom guy. And I started challenging myself to learn other parts of the business. And I would at night study about the asset management business, stocks, bonds, and how they managed and all that stuff. And this young man at the time, he was the head of distribution, became my mentor. His name is Bill Holland. And over time, the company started growing bigger. We went from 24 employees to 100, 200, and eventually became the largest independent asset management company that ran over $500 billion of assets in Canada and the US. I was sent to Vancouver to build our office in Vancouver. Then I became head of Western Canada, and then came back to Toronto, became the head of Canada, and at the age of 53 became the vice chairman and then retired from the very company that I was the mailroom boy once. So 33 years of sweat and equity, and I was rewarded well. The company treated me well, and so I was lucky to be there, but I really made my own luck by working hard and doing all the right things. My core message has always been this, that human beings should be only guaranteed two things: freedom and choice. And when you have freedom and choice, you'll be rewarded for the good choices you make by society, and you would be punished or not rewarded for the bad choices you make. And that's the price of freedom. And everybody have agency. And when you have fair treatment, and I wouldn't say life is not fair, and it never can be fair. And I learned that very young. And what I didn't do is that I didn't, it's going to sound cliche ish, but I just never gave up. And when I get rejected, I get back at it. Like I was told by the very people that I respected that I wouldn't be able to do the job that I was applying for. So when everyone said no, I always said yes. When everybody said impossible, I always thought possible. And that's my sort of wiring per se. And I think my message is human resiliency is the one thing that you should never give up. And I know bad luck happens even if you did the right things. Even if you did all the right things, doesn't mean the outcome is going to be positive. So you can't guarantee the outcome, but you have full control of the input. And so I think that's the thing that I always try to instill in young people that I mentor, or even my own son, is that you can control the output, but you can certainly control the input. And before you blame somebody else, go to the nearest mirror and ask yourself, what could I have done differently? Yeah, I wouldn't call myself an activist, but I would definitely, if you want to put me in that category, that's fine. I actually think that there are, in my definition, there are three stages to someone's life. First, one third of your life, you're learning. The second one third is you're earning. And the last one third is you're returning. And I'm in the last third of my journey. I probably have another 20 summers left. And because the average Tamil man lives to be about 76, I'm 56 now. I hope to live 100 years old, but you never know. But I wanted to really, I thought about this very deeply. I can go and make more money. Money is important, but money isn't everything. I really wanted to, and I say this to every immigrant group when I address them, is that you should always leave this country better than you have found it. And this country has given me everything I have today. So I haven't forgotten that. And gratitude is very important. And so for me, spending my next foreseeable future giving back to this land that gave this frightened skinny kid, a second chance in life. And you can only give three things back: time, money, and expertise. And I'm doing a little bit of all three. The hardest thing to do is time, give time. And even with you, Phil, I was just struggling to try to get this going because I'm in the middle of a move. And then I know you're under pressure in terms of timing. So here we are today. But yeah, so I'm spending a lot of time talking to, I just addressed a bunch of seniors, Tamil seniors, trying to give them hope. Talked to a lot of young kids who have fallen in bad luck or got into addiction or something like that. Doing keynote speaking for foundations and nonprofit organizations, giving money to hospitals, being part of the board at Scarborough Health Network, and then giving my expertise for small businesses, not charging them because they are young immigrants trying to start something and they want expertise. And so things like that is where I'm at now. Yeah, I mean, there are many organizations of all sorts and kinds, business organization, professional organizations, youth group, a senior group. And I guess with my sort of, in some ways, public persona now with the book and everything, people know who I am. And so people reach out and they ask me to come and speak at things. In fact, Saturday or Sunday, coming Sunday, I'm speaking at City Hall here in Toronto. And yeah, I enjoy doing them. I enjoy sharing the story of many. It's not Roy Ratnavel's story, it's a collective story of many. And also, I find I suffered a lot PTSD at a young age. I still have it. I just know how to manage it better now. And I find when telling the story publicly, opening up, really heals my own self and also heals the others who are listening to or subjected to similar hardship in Sri Lanka or any other country. It doesn't have to be Sri Lanka. And I get people from all sorts of life reaching out to me saying that how they are inspired by the story and would like to follow me or whatever they do. So it's really my message has always been the best revenge in life is living well. And I'm certainly, when I say living well, I'm not saying wealthy, it's just happy, balanced, and enjoying things. And I'm so happy that I stopped working so I can do all these things. 'Cause otherwise, I'm just chasing dollars and looking at the markets every day. And I think living a life on spreadsheet is awful. Look, I've been in this country since 1988, so coming up in like in another, in fact, in a week or so, it'd be 37 years. And I looking at the country today at the age of 56, and the country that I came to see, come to know, and at the age of 18, it has changed a lot. And I wouldn't say all for the better. And I say that with great respect and deep love for this land. So it's not a criticism, it's a constructive criticism. I think my father gave me the best advice ever. You can dispel your kid. He said, son, when you go to Canada, learn to assimilate. And he said, don't give up who you are as an individual. You're a Tamil, be proud of who you are. But learn to assimilate, understand the new customs and culture and become part of the fabric of that nation. And I think, unfortunately, what I have seen is multiculturalism is a great thing, but I think now where you're seeing people live within their own little pockets and not really interacting across different groups. And I saw the bad outcome of that in Sri Lanka when Tamils live with Tamils and Sinhalese live with Tamils. People are fearful of the unknown. So if we won't ever have less division and more cohesion, I think politicians and policymakers need to figure out a way how to still keep your culture, be proud of who you are, and still become the larger tent called Canada. And I think that is drifting away. And I see this quite often. And it troubles me as a man who is so grateful to this nation and deeply in love with this land for what it is. I see that as somewhat I'm not being paranoid, I don't think. I just see that as a troubling sign. That would be my one ask to every politician out there: don't let the Canadian dream die.